Hey, I'm Liz, and I just want to do a little video to talk a little bit about my story. There's been a lot of new people that have just found me on YouTube and this new channel I've started. I want to make sure that I introduce myself properly and let you know a little bit about who I am and how I've come to be the way that I am. I know I'm kind of different, and there might be some people who have followed me from the last couple of videos about our approach to Hebraic Christian homeschooling, and I'm glad to have you. But I just want to make sure that you know a little bit about who I am so that you're not surprised on my channel. Um, I actually have a long story of just how the Lord has redeemed and healed me and delivered me in many ways. And it starts when I was, just born really, had a hard birth and had a medical injury as well. You know, my mom would probably have done things a little differently with me now, knowing the things that she does. But when I was a baby, it was just, do whatever the doctor says. And so I was injured by something that was put into my body. Some of you will probably know what that means, but I'm not sure how much I can say about that on this, channel without getting in trouble. So um, I had an injury from that, and then we were in a couple of car accidents when I was younger. And then when I was 16 months old, I fell through the railing of a staircase down to the basement. We were in a split level home, and I fell through the railing from the top floor to the basement, and had significant injuries to my brain from those things. Then when I was 12, I actually had a choking incident where I became unconscious, and not only did I lose consciousness from lack of air, but I also hit my head on the way down. Then I was in gymnastics. I competed at a decently high level in that sport, as well as pole vaulting. And so there's a lot of times in gymnastics, where you just take a beating. And so there were probably very many like non-concussive hits, I would call them, that I didn't really think were a big deal. And then when I was pole vaulting at a college meet, my pole broke and I fell head first in between the box, or in between the mats and the box area where you plant the pole. And so that was interesting. And then there were, I would say, about 7 car accidents since the age of 10 that I did not cause. One, maybe I could have been somewhat at fault. I don't remember much of that, but most of them were like actually somebody rear-ended me. Someone ran a red light and hit me when I was going through the intersection, like a drunken hit and run, basically. And then one of them, I was actually walking in the crosswalk, and someone hit me as a pedestrian, and my head smashed through their windshield, and then they stopped and I rolled off onto the pavement. So there were so many like injuries. Now we have so much more of an awareness of concussions today. But throughout my life, I really didn't have much of an awareness of how all of these traumatic events can really affect your brain, and also at a deeper level, your soul. And so the Lord led me on this journey of, well, first of all, I was very sick when I was, we were newly married when I was 25, and I was just in my budding career as a fashion designer. I actually designed gymnastics apparel and different athletic, apparel for sports teams. So like a lot of the Big Ten colleges, you see their gymnastics teams and Olympic level athletes. I actually got to design their leotards, which was really fun. I really loved my job. My budding career was all going really well. And then I just started to get really sick. And I wasn't I wasn't a stranger to becoming ill. There was a lot of health challenges I had ever since I was a little girl. And those were, I was just kind of like the sick kid of the family. I remember being rushed to the hospital for breathing treatments. I had croup a lot, pneumonia, different things going on in my health there. And then um, I had a lot of times in college, which I didn't know to relate to the accident where I was hit as a pedestrian. I didn't know to relate them back to my choking incident. Like there were just certain things that started happening in my life where I would just have all sorts of different symptoms. My arms and legs would go numb. I just wake up throwing up in the middle of the night. There was not a lot of things I could like pinpoint, but overall, my health just never was really that great. And so, I just became exhausted. I was so tired. I was falling asleep at work. It became very hard for me to drive any long distances. I was just falling asleep everywhere. And thankfully, I never fell asleep at the wheel. There was just a time where it was just my husband driving everywhere because I didn't want that to happen. Basically, at this time, I was diagnosed with narcolepsy, so I was adding that to my repertoire of, diagnoses and syndromes and disorders. I had so many of them under my belt at this point, and doctors I found just wanted to kind of label my symptoms and then claim something over me and then prescribe me drugs. And it took only a short period of time to realize that's not the route I wanted to go. I was, kind of raised to respect the medical industry as it is and to listen to whatever doctors say, go ahead and do that. But the problem was it wasn't making me healthier. It was only making me sicker. And then I saw that when there wasn't like a blatant answer drug-wise for my conditions that were going on, then I was pretty much neglected by doctors, practitioners who just felt like, well, I can't help you then. And they didn't really want to help me dig into the root cause. Remember, at this point, I did not know I had a traumatic brain injury. I was, first of all, I had so much memory loss before and after these events that there was a lot of confusion. And I didn't really realize how much I had forgotten until I was properly diagnosed. And I was talking to one of my brain injury doctors, and he was like asking me what I remember. Like, do I remember my high school graduation? Do I remember this or that? And I did not. I couldn't recall them at all. And I didn't know that that wasn't normal. And so there was a lot of things that because I was just like, so deep in what was going on with all my health challenges and confusion and cognitive difficulties that I didn't see the forest through the trees. And it wasn't until, this long journey of asking the Lord to reveal what was going on, getting off of all of the prescriptions that doctors had put me on just to try to help me this way or that way. They were really well-meaning doctors. They wanted to fix my problem. The problem was that they weren't looking deeply for the root cause. And so I just started to look myself. So at this point, I had been sick, like really sick, for a number of years, and I had to quit my job. I was not yet on disability at this point, but I had gone on disability because once I was diagnosed, it was, apparent that we knew what condition it was. But it's a really hard place to be when you are disabled, you can no longer work. But if you don't have the proper diagnosis, then you can't really get any help or get anywhere with that. Also, doctors don't really take you seriously if you tell them, I don't want any medication, I just want to figure out what's wrong in my body, and I just want to heal. They don't really cooperate well with that sometimes. So this is where I was at. I was just holding on to hope that I would be healed. I knew in my heart in my spirit that I should not accept the diagnoses that were just put over me, these labels. I should not expect the outcomes that were expected of the doctors. They said I had this condition or that condition, it was incurable, I just have to cope with drugs all my life. I didn't want to accept that. I just knew that wasn't the case and that the Lord was going to heal me. And try telling that to most doctors. That really made me look like I was in that case. But anyways, I was just so sure that God was going to show me what was going on. He was going to heal me, and that I wasn't just doomed for life like they wanted to speak over me. So I started doing my own research at this point. I was basically sleeping most of the day. My sleep schedule was completely backwards back when I was diagnosed with narcolepsy. And I do recognize I had those symptoms of narcolepsy, but I still didn't just receive that label. I never called it, my condition or my disease or any of that kind of stuff. I just knew, okay, well, that's the category of the symptoms that I have that they fall under, and that's it. And so I was doing a lot of research online just about health in general. Now, I grew up, I am like on the older side of Gen Y, of the millennial generation. And I call it Gen Y because a lot of times we are forced to ask why. Why do we do this? Why do we just, label people and then just give them drugs? So, why am I so sick? There's a lot of people who are my age, and they've looked into things as far as natural health and wellness is concerned because they haven't gotten any help from the conventional medical establishment. And that's where I was. I had trusted in the establishment, as long as I, can remember. I was, regularly seeing, standard medical doctors for a long time. But then when I fell so ill and then they could not help me, I knew I had to look outside of that. So I was just learning as much as I could about nutrition, growing up just, in your standard American diet, standard American, medical care. I was not familiar with a lot of nutrition. And so, people that know me now would think this is absolutely ridiculous and might not believe it, but I would have like a Dunkin' Donuts apple fritter for breakfast and like a huge McDonald's iced coffee. Like, that was the kind of stuff I ate. Hot Pockets for dinner, like, that's just, I didn't know any better. I didn't know any better. And so I started to do a lot of research. The Lord really taught me in this time what was helping my body heal and what was causing illness in my body and not allowing it to heal. And it took my brain being so injured and me being so sick and having so much taken from me for me to really make those changes and dig into the truth of that kind of stuff. So I was just researching, reading a ton of books, and trying to figure out, okay, what are these symptoms I'm experiencing, and what can help them. And I was led, all this time that I was researching, it wasn't just in my own strength. I was just spending time with the Lord, asking the Holy Spirit to guide me. I was very close with the Lord even at this time. We had, when we got married, I was 25, and that was about when I got sick, but that's about when I rededicated my life to the Lord. I grew up in a Christian home, and there was, it was kind of like a standard Protestant church that I grew up in, so there wasn't much about the things I had to learn later in life, but there was a good foundation, and so I'm very grateful for that. However, because I was not actually delivered, like my family wasn't delivered when I was younger, I believe that really led me on this path of just total rebellion, because there were some spiritual things not dealt with when I was younger, because our church just really didn't talk about that stuff or do any of that kind of ministry. So I had quite a bit of years of total rebellion and walked away from the Lord. And so when I came back to the Lord is really when I believe the enemy just used every open door that he had in my life to attack. And a lot of that ended up manifesting in physical illness in my body. So At this point, I'm just researching, I'm learning about health, I'm changing everything we're eating. I am trying to use more herbal supplements and, things from nature that God created for us to heal, and making just a lot of changes. And um, I did make progress in my health to an extent. So this journey was just like, really led by the Holy Spirit, but also just applying the physical things He was showing me. And there was a lot of breakthrough. At this point in time, I would say the general crowd that we ran with was a very like kind of word of faith based crowd. And so they believed in healing, but there wasn't really a lot of talk about the deeper level spiritual things of deliverance. Like, okay, if you're not receiving your breakthrough and healing, a lot of times it was just attributed to not having enough faith. And it wasn't really, there wasn't ministry available to seek after, okay, what is the hang up here? Could there be something spiritual there? And in my case, there was, but I had no idea because it wasn't very like deeply acknowledged in the circles that we were a part of, as far as church and Christianity was concerned. But the good that that did was I had a firm foundation of faith in my life, and I was confessing scripture. I believed that the Lord would heal me. So when doctors tried to tell me otherwise, I had a firm foundation where I did not receive that. But at the same point, I was missing an aspect of healing that the Lord wanted to show me. So, years into this journey with the Lord, showing me things about healing and health, I came across some videos that were on YouTube, and there were stories of just remarkable healing in people's lives. And there were some that there was medical things involved in those stories. There were some things they had to apply in the physical realm, but they were still the Lord moving in their life. And I remember so clearly that night, it was one of those nights that I was the only one awake because I was still struggling with this stuff during the night. But I remember the Lord saying so specifically, I am going to heal you, and I'm going to use science to do it, but I get the glory. And I just held on to that, not only as a promise for healing, but also that there was going to be some sort of physical application that I was going to have to do my part, but that I needed to make sure that God always got the glory for it, no matter how He healed me. So I kept that moving forward. And so I remember there was a time where I was just very strong in my faith. I just knew there was some sort of breakthrough that was about to happen. And we were asked, my husband and I, to host a doctor that was coming in for a conference. And even though I was not able at this time to work a 9-to-5 job, we still had a kind of side business that we were trying to do that maybe I could just put into when I was having days where I was feeling better. And that it really didn't go very far, that business itself, but there were things that the Lord did in our life through that team. And that was, one of them was that we were hosting this doctor. And at this point, I had ordered my own testing online. I had ordered specifically an amino acids test. And it was really like the results were just really off, but nobody could tell me why they were so off. And I didn't understand about it yet at this point enough, but I would even like give it to an internal medicine doctor, and they're like, I don't know, it should be fine, because they didn't understand what would have made it off, so they just kind of brushed it off. Now, it's not like a conventional test that they were really familiar with, because this was actually ordered through a more like holistic practice online. So anyways, I have these results, and then this doctor that my husband and I were hosting at this conference, he asked, if we had any specific questions for him. And my husband kind of gave me the elbow nudge, and he was like, well, Liz, do you have some questions for him? And I was like, well, actually, I kind of do. This is kind of really crazy, but like, I've been having like all these certain symptoms and I'm trying to figure out like what's going on with my health. And then I have this test that I got and the results are kind of, peculiar, and it's it's hard for any like doctors that have looked at it to really interpret what's going on. So I'm just wondering, like, he's like, send me your test results. And so I sent them to him. I emailed them to him like that night. And he got back to me like the very next day after the conference. And he was like, you're right. These are weird results. And this is what I'm going to tell you to maybe try. And he said, because my I guess taurine and GABA, all the inhibitory amino acids that would just make you very, very calm, obviously, like I was falling asleep all during the day, like they were all very, very high, and other ones were very, very low. And so he said, what would balance that out is if you actually created in your body gamma hydroxybutyric acid. So my gamma aminobutyric acid, GABA, was too high. So he said what could balance that out is gamma hydroxybutyric acid. And your body will create that if you follow a ketogenic diet. So that went against, first of all, everything that I was reading in all of these health and nutrition books about plant-based this and that. But I was so desperate at this point. I was like, I will try anything. So I went on a ketogenic diet, and literally within 3 days, I was a completely different person. It was like somebody just stopped prescribing me the tranquilizers or something. That's how I felt. I was so tranquilized, I could not function. And then when I went on this diet, it was a huge change. Now, this was not the cure-all at all. This was just something that balanced out what needed to be balanced out at that time. It wasn't something I could do long term. I don't think that that is very healthy to do long term all the time. I believe it's a type of fast, like as a reset in your body. And so I just want to be clear about that, because I know there's a lot of like that trending online. And I do believe that there is a very helpful aspect to that diet, but I'm not going to tell you that I'm on it right now. I'm just going to tell you I use it as a fast or as a reset sometimes. And I think it's very useful that way. But I do know there are people who have all sorts of things happening in their health when they start to eat a ketogenic diet, then they have certain results. So anyways, what this did was it gave me hope. It gave me hope to know that, okay, these symptoms are not just in my head. I'm not just making a big deal out of nothing. I do have hope to get better, because some kind of breakthrough just happened, and it built my faith that the Lord was going to continue to heal me. So mind you, at this point, I've just been sick for so long. I've been basically leaving my house maybe like one time a week, and then having to recover for a whole week after I would just leave my house to go to like one meeting for our little side business we had, or like, going to church on Sunday. That would exhaust me for days. And so at this point, having my energy come back was just absolutely huge. And the hope that it created was awesome as well. So mixing those two together, I was like, I'm gonna figure this out. So what I did was I created a whole binder of all the testing that I had done over the years, so that when I went to go see a new doctor, because I had this problem, especially with cognitive difficulties, and you'll notice like in my videos, I probably will say a lot, or, that's because the Lord is still healing me. I believe that I have been healed, I would say maybe 95%, but there's still some things that He still is healing. Even this year, there's more breakthrough that I had in different things. And so I actually don't know where my baseline is, because my first brain injuries were when I was a baby. So I don't know what normal is really, but I am living in such divine health right now that I'm just so grateful. But you might notice some little things in my videos, so please don't comment and be like, oh, you say all the time. Yeah, I know. But 5 years ago, I couldn't even think straight enough to actually like do a video at all. So to me, that's a huge breakthrough. And if you only knew me, you know, 6, 7 years ago when I wasn't even able to leave my house or function, when I was walking into different rooms in my house and wondering where I was and staring out a window for 45 minutes before I even realized I was doing it, falling and collapsing on the floor for 2 hours, and I couldn't even move any of my muscles. So like for me to be able to have this channel even is a huge breakthrough. But anyways, I forgot where I was now. So I had this testing, this breakthrough with the ketogenic diet. I put together my binder, and I recommend anyone who's going through chronic health challenges to do this. I put them all in one location, and then I put all the medications that I've been on. I put all my symptoms I'm currently experiencing because of the cognitive difficulty especially, and just how thick the brain fog and everything was, and then being like anxious about a new appointment. I would get into a doctor's office and the doctor would be asking me questions. First of all, they're rushing me, and I didn't know it at this point, but my processing speed in my brain was very, very, very low. And so I would get into an office and the doctor would ask me all these questions, and I did not know in that moment how to answer them at all. It was like, I just froze. And I was put on the spot, and then I'd be like, and I'd forget why I was even at the appointment. And I didn't know at this point I had a brain injury. That would have helped to know at this point, because I'm like, I'm a smart person. Like, why do I have such a hard time communicating this, you know? And then they'd look at me like I was crazy, and then they'd just kind of write me off as someone who just had anxiety or whatnot. So I just felt really disrespected by a lot of practitioners. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going in. I'm going to be respected for the person that I am and the solutions that I want to find. And I put together a binder so that when they asked me a question, I could go right to it and I could open it up and tell them, okay, this is my story. This is what I've done so far. I want to be well. Okay. I'm not just here to complain. I don't want your drugs. I want to be healthy. And I want to figure out what's going wrong in my body. This is the breakthrough that I've had so far, but this is where I'm at with figuring this out. So I was led to an internal medicine doctor. She was really amazing. She could not give me all the answers, but she did more testing than others were willing to do. And then she had a best friend from when she went to Ohio State that she could kind of consult with. And, you know, since I was kind of a, you know, difficult case. And she helped her a little bit here and there. And then she's like, okay, well, we've done all the testing I know to do. And I think that, you know, I can't really help you much. But what I want to do is I want to refer you to this integrative medicine doctor. And he is really good at finding out the toughest cases, what is going on. And he does not stop until he figures it out, because he himself was a medical doctor, and he got sick, and the traditional medical establishment could not help him at all. So he had to look outside of that, and he found something that, you know, cured whatever was going on. And so he is very passionate about treating the person as a whole and figuring out the root cause of everything. So I was like, okay, I'm willing to do whatever. So she told me where it was. I made the appointment. And I went to this office, and they did all this like testing, like first of all, that I wasn't really used to. You know, I was used to your standard heart rate, blood pressure, that kind of thing, but they would do it sitting down, standing up. They did a lot of different, you know, things. And I was like, well, this is really thorough, you know. And then they had certain testing that he ordered after I just talked to him, you know, the very first appointment. He got my whole history. He took time with me. Now, it wasn't cheap for this appointment because this isn't going through regular insurance anymore. So I paid for that time, but it just was awesome to know like somebody cared enough to hear everything, and they weren't just rushing to the next appointment, and they left time for your story so that pieces of the puzzle could be put together. Anyways, he did a neurotransmitter test and some other testing. And the next time I went to his office, he slid over this paper, and it said, before and after your head injury, rate your symptoms. And I looked at the paper. I'm like, well, that's kind of odd. I was like, head injury? He's like, yeah, you have a brain injury. What happened to you? He's like, this test result here, this here. He's like, based on your neurotransmitter tests, like, I don't even know how you are determined enough to sit here in front of me and talk to me like a normal person, because you literally have zero serotonin or PEA going on in your brain right now. Like, he's like, you're a miracle just sitting here, that you even are determined to live a healthy life and find what's going on. Like, I have other patients that are not even near this, and they're not able to do that. So right then and there, I was like, praise the Lord, that's really cool, but wow, that's kind of messed up that my brain is struggling so much. And then I was like, well, I guess there was that one time I got hit by a car and my head smashed through the windshield, and then that time I fell about a spray when I was a kid, and then I had that choking incident, and then, I had a hit and run. Someone ran a red light, in 2010, and then my pole vaulting accident, and he was just like, what? Excuse me? Like, how did you not know that you had a traumatic brain injury? I guess I just, like I said, could not see the forest through the trees. And because every doctor that I was going to, for, like, let's say my gastrointestinal issues, like my stomach stopped digesting food. I was throwing up things that I had like the day before. And so they would check my gastrointestinal system. And because that looked okay, they were just, not able to tell me why there was still food in my stomach left from the day before. Because even when they did the endoscopy, however you say that, even when they did that, endoscopy, even when they did that, I, still had food in my stomach, but they couldn't explain why. So then they just chalked it up to depression, anxiety, whatever. So they were kind of like somewhere there, right? But I was offended by that, because I was like, I'm not an anxious person. I'm not a depressed person. So why are you putting me on these drugs? But they didn't know enough to explain that, like, hey, maybe you had some trauma to your brain. So maybe the control center of your body that's supposed to be making your organs work has something wrong, So it could have probably been taken care of way back there, but I was seeing practitioners that would only look at one part of the body. So the, neurologist was looking at the nervous system and at my sleep, but they really weren't asking me, like, okay, were you in a car accident? Like, sometimes this can be caused by that. And now I know, just speaking to people, that trauma and car accidents, things like that, brain injuries, can cause symptoms of narcolepsy and digestive issues. So what happens is, when the control center of your body that's supposed to make all these things happen is injured, then these things stop doing what they're supposed to do. But it's not necessarily because there's anything wrong here, but it's up here. And so now I understand this on the back end, but at this time, 10 years ago or so, I did not understand it at all. So this doctor, it was awesome. He was like, yes, you have a traumatic brain injury. I work with a lot of veterans. Your brain basically looks like the brain of a veteran or an NFL football player, like multiple concussions over time. But there is hope. And he told me about neuroplasticity. He told me no doom and gloom. You're just going to have to deal with these all the rest of your life. He said the brain can change, and it's going to take hard work, but you can rehabilitate your brain. And so he referred me to some brain injury treatment centers, and I went and I visited one. The Lord supernaturally provided exactly the money that I needed to go to this brain treatment center, and I had a lot of results. I had some regressions along the way. I'm not going to lie. There's some things, because I was doing a lot of cutting edge therapies and treatments, there were some bumps along the way, but the Lord was in all of that. And through the process, I learned so much about neuroscience. I learned so much about nutrition. I learned so much about toxicity. I learned so much about gut health and how that relates to the brain. And I mean, all this time, I was wondering, Lord, why are you not healing me? But he was like, I have a bigger picture in mind. I have a bigger plan for your life, Liz. And so I'm going to allow you to go through this frustrating process, because you're going to learn things that you never would have learned if it was just a quick supernatural at the altar healing like I was hoping for. So I am now rehabilitating my brain, and making a lot of progress. And I made so much progress that I actually started to work out of our home. I was very excited to start working again. I've always just been that kind of driven personality. I do not like being sick ever. Like, I have the temperament, the personality temperament that fakes well. Like, we don't fake sick, we fake well. I want to work whenever I can. I want to be doing more. And so I jumped right into it. I started a business where I was teaching fashion design and sewing out of a studio in our home. We had built our downstairs master bedroom was like my studio. It was awesome. I had people coming in all day long by referral of mouth. Like my client base just totally grew. I was teaching anywhere from ages 6 to 60. I did a fashion camp for kids. Oh, I was just loving it. But the problem is I jumped into it way too fast and my brain wasn't ready for it, and I crashed and burned. And the Lord allowed me to crash and burn. And I had to kind of regroup after that. I had to give that up. And I remember still to this day having to say goodbye to my clients and the kids I was teaching, especially. And at this point, we were paying so much out of pocket for my medical bills, because not only was I doing a lot of things medically, but now it wasn't covered by insurance because it was so, out of the box. It was not in the standard medical system anymore. So I think our medical bills were like still $20,000 out of pocket, even after anything that insurance may have picked up. Anyways, this was a big turning point in my life, because I felt like, Lord, you've given me like my life back, but then you took it away again. And I was starting to have abilities and things that I could do where I felt like I was, really making progress, but then now it seems like everything is just right back to the bottom. And the Lord allowed me to get there, because it was really the first time in my life that I was so frustrated and so brokenhearted that I really died to myself. And I still remember I was doing, I was in one of those float tanks. So they have these like float tanks where you're in salt water, and it's like a sensory deprivation kind of thing. And it was just really cool. But you just lay there and you're just floating in the water. And then they like have this big thing they close on top of it, or you close on top of it. And there's like no light, no sound, no feeling of touching like any kind of solid surface. So it just does like wonders for the brain, I thought. But it kind of became my like time with the Lord, because I'm just laying there, and I'm not good at just, laying there and doing nothing. But I was able to just have some real moments with the Lord. And I just remember getting to this place of saying, Lord, I've got nothing left. And everything that I've ever tried to do has just, crashed and burned. Every time I've tried to get up on my own, I've fallen on my face. Every time I felt like you were giving me my dreams, my life back, it didn't work out. And now I just ask you, Lord, I didn't have kids at this time because I was just so sick. We didn't know if we would be able to have kids. I didn't know, it wasn't a question of if my body would do it. It was if I would be able to even keep up with being a mom. Or, going through that process of pregnancy and things. But anyways, I just remember really, really giving him like what I had left, really dying to myself. And I believe that this was really the moment where I truly was able to be saved and used by God. I had a relationship with him. I knew of him. I was trying to obey him the best I could, but I had not given him everything. And at this point, where I felt like I had nothing in my own strength left at all, I gave him everything. And it was like things just shifted from that moment forward, and breakthrough started to happen that was just way beyond what I had in the past. And I was led to this treatment that was using high-powered magnets on my brain to help me. It was called transcranial magnetic stimulation. I had gone to Dr. Amen's clinics, and I had gotten a SPECT imaging scan to see kind of where my brain was at, what we could do to help. So there was some treatment options that they had given after my SPECT scans, and we saw what was functioning okay and what was not so okay in my brain. And, I had planned on trying this out, this treatment. And there was just a really awesome supernatural way. See, it was never just physical, but it was physical along with the Lord. Like, there were things that I would do in the physical where I had supernatural results that the Lord just totally blessed. And my doctors or practitioners or physical therapists, whoever it was, were just like amazed at the results. And I knew it was God. And He gets the glory even when I put in the effort. And so I was led to this treatment, and at this point at church, I was called out from there was thousands of people in the room, and we had this healing evangelist come to church, and he basically called me out by saying, there's someone in here who's been in over 5 accidents, and they were over 5 years ago, and you're still feeling the symptoms from them and all this stuff. And everybody who knew my story at all was like, Liz, you need to go up there, So I went up there and I got prayed for, and I thought, this is my moment. I'm getting healed. I don't need to do this treatment anymore. But, God did it a different way. And He touched me that night in a powerful way, even though I was a little disappointed that I still had symptoms. We went to Trader Joe's to go shopping afterwards, and I'm thinking, oh, it's going to be no struggle at all. But I still had sensory problems in there. I still had a hard time. So I'm okay, well, I just believe that even gradually the Lord is going to touch my body and heal me. And I believe that He made things happen in the supernatural that gave me an opportunity. I actually got not only the treatment that I was supposed to on the left side of my brain with transcranial magnetic stimulation, but they actually gave me $10,000 worth of free treatment. I'm not going to say where I went because I don't want to get them in trouble, but they actually tested on me this new treatment that wasn't FDA approved yet, but it was on the right side of my brain. Just because I asked and I said, hey, I know the right side of my brain is what struggles the most because of these injuries. Would you be willing to try it? And they said, it's not FDA approved, but sure, why don't we? Why don't we see how it affects you? And I was like, okay, let's go for it. Remember at this point, I'm like, I got nothing. I just, it's either do or die at this point, literally. So, the first time that they did this on the right side, I remember, at this point, I couldn't be in a room with a lot of people with a lot of different crowd noise because I literally could not hear the person that was right in front of me with all the sensory issues that I had. I couldn't be in a room with a ceiling fan at this point. So people who are on the autism spectrum, I understand and I get what that's like. There were so many symptoms that were very similar at this point in my journey because of my brain being so overactive that I can explain a lot of times what they're feeling. I mean, my brain would just cry. If I went into a room and my brain didn't understand it, I would just start crying, and people are like, oh, what's wrong? I'm like, nothing's wrong. My brain's crying. I don't know why, I went for an auditory processing evaluation, and they would put two words, they had headphones on me, and 2 words got, the sound of 2 words came in this ear, and then 2 words were spoken into this ear, and I had to kind of sort out what ear each word was. I could not do it, so my brain just cried. I just started crying, and they're like, oh, are you frustrated? I'm like, no, I'm not frustrated. My brain's just crying. It's freaking out. I don't know why. So I can understand when people with sensory issues have those outbursts of emotion because it just happens. So there's so much that through my journey, the Lord's just allowed me to be able to communicate for people who can't really put it into words themselves. And that's just been part of the silver lining in this journey. But anyways, that night, I have to bring myself back to where I was in the story. That night I went to one of our business meetings where normally I would go and I would just be sitting in the back of the room. I would try to focus like on something so that I wasn't overwhelmed sensory wise. Many times I'd have to leave the room because I would just be way too overwhelmed. And if anybody spoke to me at all during these meetings, when there was other people talking in the room, I would just act like I knew what they were saying, and I never knew what they were saying. I tried to read lips, and so I could kind of get a gist of what they were saying sometimes, but I remember going to that meeting that night, and my friend was talking to me, and other people were talking in the room at the same time, and I started to cry, not because I was overwhelmed, but because I literally emotionally was overwhelmed, that I could hear her and I could understand what she was saying. And I was like, this is amazing. And I started to notice just this calm that came over me. I noticed that chronic pain that I was wearing all the time and didn't even realize how intense that chronic pain was. I mean, when you're a brain injury survivor, you just deal with stuff. You deal with so much stuff. It basically feels like you have the flu every single day. So aches and pains are like nothing to someone who has a brain injury. So I didn't realize how much pain I was in until it got taken away with this treatment. And I was just blown away. I was like, I feel numb. Like, this is crazy. I feel like I'm on drugs. This is good. This is good stuff, you know? But the Lord used that mightily to retrain my brain to work more properly. And it was cool that it was magnets. Like, the Lord created magnets, you know, he created herbs, he created light, he created all of these different things with different frequencies and stuff. And I know people can get really weird when people talk about frequencies because they think it's like some spooky thing, but just call it electricity if that makes you feel better. You know, like people talk about, oh, that's so weird, somebody's grounding, but they don't think it's weird that the outlets in their house are grounded. But just when people respond better to that kind of frequency, I don't know. It's just really weird, especially in Christian circles. People don't understand, like, you're talking about electricity and everything has some sort of magnetic electric field to it, every single thing. So I'll make more videos about that because I think it's super fascinating. But I mean, we don't seek out the frequencies, worship the frequencies, none of that kind of stuff. You can get into weird spiritual stuff with that, but when you're just actually looking at the science behind it and using a magnet to heal your brain, I mean, it's just, I don't know, it's just science. So anyways, this was the point where I felt like, okay, I'm healed enough to have a child. Like, I feel like I've consistently been so well that, like, let's start a family. And this was a huge thing, you know? So I told my brain injury doctor, I'm like, I think that I'm at this point where I think we could have kids. And she was like, well, you know, I just want to make sure you know that a lot of times when people have a brain injury, they get pregnant because they're feeling so great, and then they have a huge regression during their pregnancy. And I was like, I'm not receiving that. I am going to be fine. Everything's going to be great. Well, I got pregnant with my daughter, and it was a very hard pregnancy. I felt like I backtracked a lot of the progress that I made, but all through that pregnancy, even the really hard moments, I just held on to that the Lord was healing me even through the pregnancy. I learned about how your child in your womb actually shares stem cells with you. And I learned about how the woman's brain changes when she is pregnant, and it actually shrinks in certain areas and then it grows in certain areas and it changes. So neuroplasticity is very prevalent in the body when women are pregnant. And so I just claimed that over myself. And yes, it was tough. And it was really tough postpartum with her because my immune system went a little bonkers, and I became allergic to things like barometric pressure change and stuff like that. So that was a whole big thing in itself. So I had made so much breakthrough, and again, I felt like, what is going on? Like, I really thought this was it. I thought it was just going to be uphill from here. We're just on the mountaintop. Everything's great. And I find myself living out the hardest 3 months of my life after my daughter was born. I thought I was going to lose it. And it was just a lot. It was just a lot. And there was other things that were happening in this moment, medical bills that were coming in where I thought insurance would pay for it, and I get this $10,000 bill in the mail. We're doing some check because there was like something that we had found, in my body that we were getting an ultrasound on and checking, and it was just, it was hard. I was sleeping maybe an hour at a time because not only did I have this awesome, healthy child, but she's also a lot like her mama, and she did not like to sleep. She wanted to boss everyone around all the time. So it was hard. I broke out in bruises all over. I was so stressed out. I was not sleeping. And I was allergic to barometric pressure change, which in Virginia Beach, where we lived, is every other day. I felt like I was going to die. I had like that anaphylaxis, like feeling of doom. And I was like, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. Well, the Lord allowed me to get there because He had more for me. And so I'm thankful that He did. I'm thankful that He allowed me to get to that point. Still, as hard as it was, those are still the 3 hardest months of my life. I would say 6 hardest months of my life. Because not only was I really sick at this point, but I also had to take care of a child. And I'm like, what did I just do to myself? What did I do to my kid? And so, anyways, He allowed me to get to that point because around that 6-month time frame, after I had my daughter, a friend at church reached out. And she was like, hey, Liz, I felt like the Lord was telling me to talk to you after church. So would you have some time? And I said, yeah, sure. We could do that. And she started to chat with me in the lobby after church. And she said, I saw that video that you have online about your story, about all those traumatic accidents that you were in. And I was like, oh yeah, at this time I had just a little snippet about my story because I had a nonprofit at this time, which has now kind of changed into our entire ministry now. But at the time, I had started a nonprofit for other people who were struggling through chronic illness and traumatic brain injury, and trying to help them with what I've learned along the way so far. Even though I was still walking it out, it just gave me a sense of purpose to be able to help other people and share through even my pain. If it could just help one person, it was like worth it to me. So I knew that the Lord was using it even then, when I was still in the trenches. But anyways, she saw the video of all of that and she's like, did you ever think, Liz, that could be spiritual? And I said, well, I'm still that kind of word of faith mindset. I'm just like, well, like the enemy is just trying to attack, but I'm overcoming. I'm a conqueror and I'm healed. By His stripes, I'm healed. And she was like, but actually you need healing. Like, actually you're sick. So why would you think you're still sick or why would you think you're healed if you're still sick? She was just like talking sense into me basically. And I was just so focused on my healing and walking that out, and that I never really like sat back and thought like, oh, okay, maybe something is missing here. And that's why I kept 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. And I was at this really hard moment in my life. And so I was at a desperate place that I was ready to hear what she had to say. And she said, let me tell you about my deliverance testimony. And I was like, deliver what? Because anytime, like any of the churches that I had gone to over the course of my entire life, nobody talked about deliverance. And she shared with me how the Lord set her free, healed her in her physical body, and was still, in that process of healing her, but all the breakthrough that she had, and the things that the Lord just like lifted off in her life, and the curses that were broken and things like that. And I was like, whoa, this is like way beyond anything that I've ever heard in the church, any church I've been a part of. So it was new to me, but I was so ready to hear it that I was like, well, I'm ready to try anything because I'm really struggling right now. And so she sent over some like kind of repentance and renouncement prayers. She wasn't as comfortable yet doing deliverance ministry. She does it now, but she was just at the point where she wanted to share it with me and just be obedient to the Lord. So she sent me over some kind of resources and things to look up and watch. And I remember just learning about deliverance through like Derek Prince videos on YouTube, and these prayers that she had sent of renouncement and stuff. And I wasn't familiar with really true biblical confession, repentance, renouncement, forgiveness, inner healing, deliverance, all those things that like I live out now and minister on a daily basis, people, like it just was foreign to me. And so she shared those prayers and I was like, hey honey, let's try this. It was basically like, I don't know if this is real. Like I'm still looking at it, searching out scripture, but let's just try this. And so we just prayed together. We just started this process of deliverance and inner healing and renouncing these things that had come down our generational line. And, we had a lot of stuff that was like just coming, against us. It was like the enemy was using every open door that he had. And we started this process of deliverance and it was just beautiful. Stuff just started healing in my body supernaturally. Like the Lord would just touch me. Like I would just be praying and he would just touch me and do in like 20 minutes what it would have taken years of brain injury therapies to do. And then I was just like, wow, the fog is gone, and I'd have all these different like just evidence of healing, like certain test results that I would have, and then they were different now, and all I could explain was that it was just prayer and the Lord touching me and healing me and delivering me. And so just all sorts of stuff the Lord took us through, and it was a journey. It was a process. The Lord had to heal me in my soul and then deliver me of something and then heal me a little bit more and then deliver me of something. And then, same thing with my husband. We were going like alongside each other just in this, and he touched our finances. Like we went from just really, our finances were atrocious. I couldn't work anymore. $100,000 in student loan debt still. We were underwater on our house. We had like $63,000 of credit card medical debt because all of my medical debt was just going on a card because we had no money to pay for it. And he just like the Lord supernaturally paid down our debt as we lived a life of obedience. It was no longer, okay, Lord, this is what we want to do. This is our plan. And we just expect you to bless it. And we're just going to confess in faith it's going to work. But it was like, Lord, you tell us what to do. You are the leader of our life. You are the Lord of our life. You tell us what to do and we will do it. And that is the way, that switch and just being willing to totally lay it down for the Lord. That was huge in our life. And that's when he was like, okay, now I can bless you. Now I can heal you. Now I can deliver you. Now the curses are broken. And we walked into this freedom we never experienced before. And it was absolutely beautiful. It was a process. There were some ups and downs in the process, but it was absolutely beautiful. And then the Lord said, I'm going to train you up and you're going to be able to minister this to others. And that's where we are at personally, where, I feel like we are always going to be healed more and more until we're in our glorified bodies with Jesus. I believe that. People are like, well, when does the process start? I'm like, when you're just like Jesus. And but we're just at this point where the Lord has trusted us to minister this healing and deliverance to others. We, along the way, have just asked so many questions. Why were we not taught about deliverance growing up in the church? Why were we taught this in church, but that's not in the Bible? And why does the Bible say this and nobody talks about this either? And then questions about, the medical establishment and just, why do they want to give your baby all these things that are unnecessary? Why do they expect you to birth in a hospital like it's a medical emergency? We just started to question so much, and the Lord started to answer so much. And we live a completely different lifestyle than we did before I got really sick. So the Lord used that in my life, in our life, to change the trajectory of where our lifestyle was going. Did I ever in a million years, like all throughout my childhood and teenage years, like, did I ever think I'm going to grow up and be this homesteading, homeschooling, home birthing, gardening and herbal tincture making and grounding, all natural fiber fabric wearing person. Not at all. I remember apple fritters for breakfast. That was me. But I would not change it for anything. The Lord has used all of the trials in my life to bring us back to how He designed us to live, how He intended for us to do life and to live in divine health and to seek out His truth and His word and to even do like church community. There's just so much about life and ministry, Christianity, and health and lifestyle and schooling, education that He's just rocked our world. So that's the stuff that I want to share here. And this is a very long video. It's probably the longest video I'll ever make. But I mean, it's a long story. And I probably even just hit the iceberg of all the things that God's done through this story. So I'll do smaller like bits of it as the Lord leads of, different testimonies that He's given us in our life. But this is kind of like the, snippet, the overview of my testimony and what God's done in our life and why He's birthing this channel now. 7 years ago, I had this burden to be able to share things with people that I had been learning, and I physically couldn't do it. I had so many videos of me just like, I would sit in front of a camera and my mind would be completely blank and I could not even speak. I would just ramble. I would have no cohesive thoughts whatsoever. And now He's given me this further healing and restoration and ability to communicate, and I need to be faithful with that. So, just so you know, if you're following this channel, like, it's not going to be just your normal homesteading channel. It's not going to be just your normal homeschooling channel, home birthing channel. It's not going to be just your normal, ministry channel, but it's going to be all encompassing, because I believe that's the way the Lord designed us, for not little compartments, right? So yes, I'm not going to be very well niched, I guess, because that's like a thing in social media. You want to be niched, but I'm not, because that's not how our life is. That's not how the Lord made me to be. That's not how my brain is. I'm going to share a lot of different things. And so maybe that means it won't be super popular in one area on YouTube, and that's fine. I trust that the Lord is going to do with this channel what He wants to do, and that the right people are going to see it. The right people are going to see even just a specific video, and they're going to be blessed by it, and their life is going to change. Either that, or they're just going to feel like, oh wow, another weirdo like me. I love those comments. They're like, oh my goodness, I didn't know there was anyone that was like me like that. And I'm like, yay, we have community now, because it really can be kind of, when you just know, you just live differently than most people. You just kind of get used to like, okay, they're just not going to get it. And so I think that there are going to be people who stumble across this channel and be like, oh my goodness, somebody who actually might get me. So I'm glad to be that, but there are many times where I'm able to explain, because of the experiences I've gone through, I'm able to explain to a mom why their child is struggling. I'm able to explain to someone why, someone they love, their brain doesn't function the same way, or something like that, and though the Lord has healed me, He will never let me forget how hard it was and the things that I struggled with. I'll give you an example. About 8-9 years ago was the point where I died to myself. I didn't die physically, but I died. Like, I finally crucified my flesh. I crucified my soul. I was crucified with Christ. I was like, I give you everything. Boy, that's an amazing place to be. And it's a hard place to be. And sometimes the Lord will allow us to go through hard things to get there. I don't think that the majority of the Christian church in America has been to that point. And so I feel very blessed that the Lord allowed me to be to that point. In 2016 is when I was at that rock bottom state. Like, I had some improvements in some things, but it felt like other things in my brain just became worse. And that's when I was really struggling with sensory processing. And I did a cognitive evaluation. I found out that I had mild cognitive impairment, is what they call it. That's what the diagnosis is. And at first I was like, mild cognitive impairment? You call this mild? It's a struggle, you know? But then I looked it up and I'm like, oh, this is like a legit thing. This is like stage 3 of 7 of Alzheimer's is what this website is saying. Okay, that's kind of serious for me to be 31, 32 years old and be struggling this much. My processing speed was in the 2nd percentile. That was actually the lowest percentile possible in this testing you could be. And though, you know, some like my intelligence markers were like really high. So I was able to be very high functioning, but my memory and processing speed were like the lowest you could possibly get. So in a room full of 100 people, like I was the slowest one. And this was a point where concussions were becoming more well known about. And the movie Concussion had come out with Will Smith, and people were becoming more aware of CTE. And that's a degenerative problem that happens after you have way too many concussions. And so people that I had known in the brain injury community, they were already donating their brains to science. They were giving up hope. And I had this diagnosis. I didn't even have kids yet or anything. I was like, that can't be. That can't be. Well, I am so thankful to say that every year since then, my processing speed has only gotten faster and faster, and my cognitive functioning has only gotten better and better. And I have just been like in my physical body, different things, even food allergies. The Lord's healed me of food allergies I had for like 12 years, even more than that. That's just how long I did the blood tests and knew about it. I have gotten younger in my brain. I've gotten more and more healed ever since then. And now I'm just so grateful that I have the opportunity to just share that with other people. And I pray that, you know, the Lord uses this channel, this vehicle, to reach others. So whether it's someone who's a homeschool mom and they're just like, hey, I can't find the right style, or maybe you are a brain injury survivor, or maybe you have dealt with a very chronic illness. Maybe you have children who are struggling with certain things. Maybe you're a Christian and you're just fed up with cultural American Christianity. Me too. Maybe you just are hungry for a deeper walk with God and more truth in His Word. Maybe you are budding in your ministry that you've been called to. Maybe the Lord is putting on your heart that, there's some inner healing or deliverance He wants to do in your life. I hope that we've connected for that reason and that you reach out, because it's really important that we allow the Lord to use us to whatever capacity. And I just, I'm sitting here on my bedroom floor because that's just where I could hide from my kids to do this video, honestly. And that's just who I am. Like, my videos are not going to be super professional, and I'm going to try to cut out some of the things where I just have these blank stares or whatever, but I'm just me. I'm just me, and I'm okay with just being me. I'm okay with the way the Lord made me. I'm okay with, as Paul says, I boast in my weaknesses, because in my weaknesses He is strong. And it took me a long time to get there. It took me a really long time to get there and to be okay with all of that. But I just want to come across on here as just the person that I am, the real down-to-earth person that the Lord has made me, that's not perfect, but is on a journey of healing, restoration, and just the truth in His Word, and walking out my calling in Christ Jesus. And that includes what I do at home, that includes what I do in ministry and in business and all that stuff. So anyways, I wanted to share that, and if you've made it this far, congratulations. And if not, hopefully I said something that was worthwhile. But I pray that you have a blessed week. And if that's you, if you connected with anything I said in particular, I pray that you reach out and that we start, communication back and forth, and we let the Lord do what he wants to do.